There's a question that's asked about the present situation with the virus and the worldwide shutdown, and is this part of Chevli Mashiach, the Birthpangs of Moshiach? So there are different ways to approach this. First of all, but specifically is the Chevli Mashiach. So first, let's say, what is Chevli Mashiach, the Birthpangs of Moshiach? So it's explained that Golus is likened to being pregnant or pregnancy, and Geula is the birth, and the Chevli Mashiach are the birth pangs that precede the birth. So the Rebbe actually has a mimer entitled the Havin Inyan Chevli Mashiach. I think that's what it's called in the Sefer Contradiction of his Maimorim, and he explains that what are the birth pangs, the Chevli Mashiach, Chevli Leida. This is when in English they're called contractions. That there's a contraction. The whole idea of Geula, the whole idea of birth is a greater level of freedom, being freed from the confinement of the womb, confinement of Golus. And birth in Geula is being freed from that confinement. So, l'chayra, the contractions are contrary to birth and contrary to Geula. But he explains there that in fact, these are the things, these contractions, these birth pangs bring about the Geula, bring about the birth. So there are things that seem the opposite of Geula, but in fact they're bringing about the Geula. So based on that explanation, we could for sure say that the events happening today are Chevli Mashiach, but we would have to add that this is to be understood as not as something negative, but rather as part of the process of the Geula, no matter how it looks to us, however we struggle to understand it. That's one nekuda. The next nekuda is that we have to take into account what the Rebbe says many times. The Rebbe says that all we need to do now is open our eyes, and we'll see that the Geula is already here. All the inyanim of the Geula are here. Each one of us is in a state, the Rebbe says, of a state of Golus, but it's a private Golus with our own personal issues. But the world is ready for Geula. The world has been refined. Avodas Habarim is finished. So therefore, all we need to do is open our eyes. So this is this contradiction. You're telling me it's Chevli Mashiach, which are the birth pangs to bring about the birth of Mashiach, the birth of the Geula, the birth of the birth, but then the Rebbe is saying you only need to open your eyes, which implies that the birth has already taken place. So in which case, there can't be contractions, can't be birth pangs. So as a possible way to answer this, there's a place, the Mittler Rebbe writes, not in the mimer that I mentioned before, somewhere else, maybe in Torah's Chaim, he mentions a concept that he calls Ruchos Habetin. Ruchos Habetin means like the winds of the stomach or spirit of the stomach. But he's talking about there that after a woman gives birth, she has already given birth. She had her contractions and she successfully gave birth, but she can still have pains. These pains are called Ruchos Habetin because there's nothing really there. These are not the contractions that bring about the birth. These are pains. You might call them phantom pains. I don't know how this corresponds to our physical experience, but this is what he writes over there: that after the birth there can be pains. Birth pains after the birth. So we could take this to explain that yes, the Geula has already arrived. The world is ready. We have to make sure that we're completely ready, and the disturbing things that are happening are, yes, part of the Geula, but there's something that follows. They're not exactly Chevli Mashiach. They are something that follows. So in any way that we want to examine it, one thing's for sure that Mashiach has already said, Higia Zman Geulaschem, the time for the Geula has arrived. If this is Chevli, not Chevli, the focus on ourselves has to be the same, that we have to be besimcha, because this is the end of Golus. The walls of Golus are falling before our eyes. In the words of the Fidik Rebbe, the walls of Golus are burning. And we strengthen ourselves and strengthen others, and nekabel pnei Mashiach b'simcha. We'll greet Mashiach with simcha and joy. Yechi Adoneinu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Le'olam V'od.